right?
I think so.
Yeah, while other participants will be joining, let me introduce myself. My name is Lidiya Simak. I'm a marketing specialist at Great Teacher Training. And today we've gathered here for the second time in such a format, which is called Great Teacher Talks. And we are talking about teaching for peace. And our mission today is to support all teachers, from English teachers from Ukraine. And I would like to start today's meeting, today's event with a quotation of Viktor Frankl, who was an Austrian psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. And he survived in the concentration camp, in the Nazi concentration camp. And he wrote a very famous book. So the first thing he said, the first to break were those who believed that everything would end soon. Next, those who didn't believe this will ever end. And only those survived who focused on their actions without any expectations about what could or could not happen. So what I want to say about this situation and the war in Ukraine right now, and the things that we can do now is what we have to do is to focus on our actions and turn our temporary life into normal life and work for the victory. So welcome to Great Teacher Talks, Teach for Peace. Today we are going to have two sessions for Ukrainian teachers. And with us today is Reese. You know him very well, I suppose, and Lidiya Simak. They are teacher trainers from Great Education Center. Chris is a CELTA trainer, and he also prepares our teachers for Delta Module 1 exam. And Lida runs TKTYL preparation courses, and she's also a CELTA trainer. So the first session is going to be conducted by Chris, and the second session is going to be conducted by Lida. Yeah, so I think I can give a floor to our speakers right now.
Yeah, sure. So shall we go ahead and dive into things? Lida, would you like to give a short introduction before I start, or would you like to introduce yourself when you start?
If you don't mind, Chris, I will just say hello, and I will wish you, I want to say that I'm really happy to see you, because I haven't seen you for a long time, and I'm very happy to see familiar faces. Let's just enjoy what we're doing. And then, yeah, good luck.
Yeah, so that's the aim of today, for us to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of enjoyment, and hopefully a little bit of something that we can use in the days and weeks moving forward. So as Yulia said before, my name's Chris. I'll be leading the first session today. A couple of little things as we get started. We've got lots of people here. We can do this in a kind of a more active way or a less active way, because I know some of us may have different situations where we're watching from, or different things that we might have to do at once. If you would like to be more active and participate, could you just send a plus into the chat? This will give me an idea of how to organize a few of the activities later. Lovely. I see lots of pluses coming in. That makes me very optimistic. So there may be points where I put us into breakout rooms for discussions with pairs or a group of people. If you are not able to participate in those, that's okay. No one's forcing you to. If you would like to, on the other hand, you'll be more than welcome to at these points. The other thing that I'll ask is that, and I'm actually going to do this right now, I'm going to ask everyone to switch off their cameras for now. There's a reason for this. It's that, well, we've got 116 people here who may be suffering with different levels of internet connection. For example, I right now I'm joining from Germany, and German internet is, well, it's German internet. So so my connection might slow down at some points. Having fewer cameras on will help to kind of stabilize the connection for everyone. If we're working and talking in pairs and groups, things like that, feel free to turn it back on. Just in the open group, when there's 120 of us already, that will help us to make sure things work. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into today. So in our first session, we're going to be talking about, just share my screen. Right. We're going to be having a chat about building engagement. This is actually an old session of mine. It's one I haven't given in a very long time. I remember the first time I gave it, I was giving it in response to some problems that I'd been hearing from teachers that I worked with on CELTA courses, teachers who I was mentoring, things like this. And they often said many of the same things to me. They said things like, oh, I teach teenagers. It's so hard to keep my teenagers motivated, interested. They feel like they want to leave as soon as they can. Or that, well, they hate teaching online because, well, you can't see learners' faces. A bit ironic because I've just asked everyone to turn the cameras off. But I feel like I'm talking to no one. That some of their adult students didn't want to do the tasks, or so didn't want to speak to each other. They just wanted to do coursebook exercises all the time. Or that whenever they said things like reading or listening, their students kind of turned their nose up and said, why should I do that? I can do that at home. That some of their learners, even in very extreme situations, just refused to do what they were asked to do and sat there while their colleagues were working. And the one that I would add right now is that, and this is something I've seen with my own students, especially my teenagers who I work with, that many students seem to be a bit disconnected, a bit distant after what they've been through. You can type in the chat, but do these sound like familiar, maybe thoughts or feelings that we might have had in our practice? All capitals, yes. Yeah, lots of people indicating, yeah, and this is my own experience as well, which means that clearly we've got a problem that we need to deal with. And the problem is basically one of what we call motivation or engagement. And these are slightly different concepts, but I might be using the two terms interchangeably throughout the day. So if we've got a problem with motivation, then we need to understand what motivation is. Well, or what engagement is. Well, here you can see a short definition of engagement. That in education, it's talking about this degree of attention, interest, optimism, and passion in our students, which all sounds really lovely. Like, oh, I want my students to show curiosity and passion. Especially when we're talking about their motivation to learn or to make progress. There's a slight problem with this, though, which you can see here. That according to, well, one researcher, Dornier, who's one of the kind of leading experts on motivation and engagement in English language teaching, well, he makes this exact claim that, well, that motivation doesn't exist. So on the one hand, I want my students to be motivated, but on the other hand, I've got this problem that there may not be a magic catch-all how I can motivate them. Now, what Dornier really means here isn't that motivation doesn't exist. He means that motivation is complicated. To have a look at how complicated this can be, we're going to forget about teaching English for a little bit. And we're going to look at the thing which I've been trying to make myself do for the last 2 weeks or so. Go for a jog. So here you can see a woman. Her name's Jackie. I'd like us just to think about this. You can type your ideas in the chat. Let's imagine that Jackie wants to improve her fitness and wants to start jogging. The question is, what might motivate Jackie to get up and jog? I'll give you about 30 seconds or so, 30, 45 seconds. Can you type your ideas in the chat? Say results. Buying new sneakers and wanting to show them off. Being fit. Summer is ahead. Oh, okay. She wants to run a marathon. I've seen someone lose weight, be healthy. So even here, a compliment from her boyfriend or husband. She wants to find a boyfriend or husband. Okay. Enjoying the process. Even then, when we think about this, we've heard so many different rationales as to why she might want to get up and jog. And well, Dornia had the same ideas. She said, well, she might just like jogging. It might be the way that she clears her head in the morning, prepares for the day in advance. Maybe she's made something like a New Year's resolution that she'll do some every day. Maybe she would like to lose weight, like we said before. Maybe Rupert is jogging along the path, and Jackie likes Rupert. So Jackie will start, jogging to catch up with him. Oh, fancy seeing you here. Oh, that was unexpected. Her athletic coach might have told her to keep running if she's in a training working with a personal trainer. She could be actually in a well-paid TV commercial, just advertising running shoes, and her break is over. She has to jog in order to get paid. Could also be that a large dog has suddenly started chasing her. And, well, the thing that most often motivates me to run when I'm outside, it might have just started raining. All of these things would be different kinds of motivation that might start or continue the process of Jackie jogging. But they all would work in very different ways. So when we talk about motivation, we're talking about 3 different kinds of motivation in general. The first type we can refer to as choice motivation. This is the decision to begin doing something. If I'm Jackie, this is my decision to start jogging. This is when I put my shoes on and when I leave my house. And probably it's going to be from these in the first 3. Maybe it's my resolution. I've made the choice. Maybe I want to lose weight. I've made the choice to do this. Or maybe I see Rupert, if I'm Jackie, and I think, oh, he's cute. I make the choice to start running after him. So this is about setting goals and planning to achieve them. I want to do this. How am I going to do this? Once I've made the decision to start jogging, I'm also going to have to make a decision to keep jogging. Because remember, I can stop jogging whenever I want. I just stop. This is what we call executive motivation. This is the motivation to keep doing something, to persist with challenges, to try to solve problems instead of just giving up and walking away. This also involves monitoring goal completion. It is also facilitated by belonging to or feeling like I belong to a group or having a group of peers. For example, if we go back to our example about Jackie's athletic coach telling her to keep running, well, if she's in a running class or has a running group, this may even be more effective as motivation because they'll kind of motivate each other. You don't want to fall behind your running group. You want to keep up with them because nobody wants to be the slowest. Finally, there's what we might call critical retrospection. This is after doing something or after finishing a certain period, analyzing if our goal was achieved or not. So, for example, if my goal is to jog, let's say 5 kilometers faster, I check my time at the end of my jog and I say, okay, was I faster? Alternatively, if my goal was to attract Rupert, I look and I see if I have Rupert's phone number yet. If not, well, try again tomorrow. So all of these things go into our motivation, which leads us to wanting to do something or not. If we transfer this to the English classroom, there might be a few ways that we might do this. I'm going to show you several behaviors here. Negotiating the rules together and enforcing them, providing personalized topics which appeal to the interests and needs of the group, focusing on icebreakers, responding to learners when they ask for help, showing concern, greeting learners, learning something unique about them, and a few other things. Here, I'm going to send this list into the chat. Then I'm going to put you together into breakout rooms. Your job will be to talk together with your partners and decide which of these things you think would be the most likely to improve student engagement in the classroom. Try to pick what you think would be the best 3 or 4 things from this list. So I'll put you together in partners. Give me just 1 second. Please don't message the chat right now. That way this message does not get lost. 1 and 2. And I'm going to put us together into our breakout rooms. So with your partners, take about 3-4 minutes. Ready, steady, let's go. All right, so can you type into the chat box which numbers your group's picked? People talking about icebreakers, numbers 1 and 2, numbers 2. It's interesting that we've all actually focused quite a bit on personalization. The truth of the matter is actually all of these things affect engagement. I've asked you a trick question. If we look a little bit more closely, we'll see actually that all of them affect different kinds of engagement. Negotiating the rules together, enforcing them, personalized topics, and icebreaker activities, these affect choice motivation, this decision, am I going to start engaging with the material or not? But this is where very often we as teachers tend to fall short, because while this is enough to get learners interested, it's not enough to keep them interested in the materials. We're focusing on this choice motivation, but we're not concentrating on executive motivation. These things are important, but we have to go further. These points, responding to learners when they ask for help, showing concern, greeting them, using their names in a positive way, not only using their names when we criticize them or tell them that they're doing something wrong, learning something unique about them, getting to know them as people, moving around, letting them know that I'm here, I'm keeping an eye on you, enabling the class to learn more about each other, build a sense of community like Jackie's running group. All of these things affect our executive motivation. So if the first group, if the words in blue help us get learners to start engaging, the purple things are what we have to do to keep them engaged. Because it's not enough if I get them engaged if I can't hold them there. So a very famous comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, he had his own TV show for a long time, and he had this quote about comedy. And he said, well, the only difference between me and a starting comedian is that a starting comedian has 5 minutes before they boo him off the stage. I have 10 minutes before they boo me off the stage. But all the same, if he can't keep his listeners engaged, they're going to tell him to get lost. Our students are the same. It's not enough to pick the nice topic that gets them engaged. That's a lovely start. That's the first 5 minutes of the lesson. We've got to hold them there the rest of the lesson. Offering concrete help and feedback and correcting marking papers and tests promptly is what deals with this last stage of motivations, critical retrospection. There was actually a bit of research done on this by John Hattie. I don't remember the exact numbers. It was a long time ago that I read it, but I remember the rough statistics. We as teachers all say that, well, we give good feedback. We help our students. We give feedback. He observed a class of students or several classes of students over the course of several days. I'm going to ask you to make a guess in the chat. What percentage of students did not receive any feedback from their teachers or their peers throughout an entire day? 5%, 10%? Lots of people giving a pretty high percentage, and that's absolutely correct. If I remember correctly, the number was somewhere between 80 and 90%. That means that for every student, for every group of 30 students, 25 to 27 of them are not getting any feedback on any given day based on how they're doing. And if we say that part of what keeps us engaged is monitoring our goal completion, bringing us, seeing how close we're getting to our goals, well, that's a problem. So providing feedback and help that's meaningful, as well as correcting and marking papers and tests promptly, are very important in getting this retrospection, keeping this engagement cycle going. So this is step one. This is how we get them there, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. We can still use these principles in an activity. This is a really simple activity based on some of these principles. I call it Hey, Don't You. It can be used with levels from pre-intermediate to upper intermediate, with different language focuses, although I typically focus on question forms. You ask the learners to pick 5 of their classmates and write down one thing they think they remember about each person. If they know for sure, they shouldn't write it. And if they don't know at all, they shouldn't write it. So that means that it has to be something which they think they know, but they're not sure about. Maybe she does dance on the weekend. Maybe I think he plays football. You can demonstrate this with a few students. Learners mingle and ask their classmates if this fact is true or not. If they find out, then they find out more. If it's true, they find out. If it's false, they find out what's really true. So they can walk up to their partner and say, hey, don't you play football? It's like, yeah, I play football. Okay, so when do you play? Like, what position do you play? All of that. Say, hey, do you play football? Or, hey, don't you play football? No, sorry, I play hockey. Oh, really? Okay, so how long have you been playing hockey? How long do you play hockey for? When do you go play hockey every week? Where do you play it? So they can find out a bit more about this. Learners can report then on open class about what they've remembered correctly. When we talk about for lower levels, well, we might use this to introduce the idea of a negative question when I think that something is already true. They might produce a dialogue that looks something like this. Hey, don't you watch Teen Wolf? Yeah, I do. Who's your favorite character? For higher levels, like upper intermediate, we might demonstrate this, we might use this to practice something a little bit meatier. Higher levels might be introduced to tag questions. Hey, you watch Teen Wolf, don't you? We could even use this as an opportunity to teach this difference in intonation, when we're sure and when we're not sure. Hey, you watch Teen Wolf, don't you? I'm pretty sure you do, I'm just checking. Or, hey, you watch Teen Wolf, don't you? I think you do, but I really don't remember. So, nope, sorry. Well, what's your favorite TV show then? So at lower levels, we might focus on the negative questions. At higher levels, we might focus on the tag questions. But the aim of the activity, in addition to the linguistic practice that it's providing, is to encourage the learners to find out more about each other, to build this sense of community. Because if there's a community, we're talking about building these relationships, we're talking about engaging this executive motivation. We're keeping them engaged in the process, not just getting them there and hoping for the best. So this is one example of an activity based on these principles of how we generate motivation. So, and here, one thing I forgot to mention as well is the teacher, as setting the task, also has a chance to demonstrate that they remember little details about their learners. I could say, hey, you watch this show, don't you? You play this sport. I know about you. I've been listening to these little things that you say, which also shows the students that you care about them, and not only their grades. This also is going to help engagement. It's going to build this rapport between you and the students and hopefully encourage them to listen to you a bit more. So we're going to have a look at another factor in motivation, which is the role of success. Here you can see a poster for a film. Can anyone type in the chat? Does anyone know why this exact poster? Is it transformation? Yeah. So the film, it's called Pemiglion because there's something in psychology called the Pemiglion effect, or what's also called a self-fulfilling prophecy. That is the belief or expectation that someone holds about their future often winds up becoming reality. This can be seen, for example, in a student who thinks that they're going to fail. So, oh, I'm no good at this. I'm going to fail. Oh, I'm so bad. I'm bad at English. So, why should I even try to study? I'm just going to fail. So why should I do this exercise? I'm not going to learn it anyways. I'm no good. So the fact that they believe negative things about themselves actually causes these negative things to happen. Whereas maybe if they did do their homework, they did do the exercise, maybe they would actually achieve a positive result. The opposite can also be true. If I believe that I'm going to be successful, I'm going to do everything that I can in order to be successful. So the short version is, and what this also means is that in order for us to have success, we need to succeed. Or as some people say, success breeds success. When I'm successful, I grow more confident. Because I'm more confident, I work harder and I engage with things more, and then I succeed more, and it becomes this positive feedback loop. So how do we then, as teachers, facilitate success? Well, there's a few different factors that affect learners' abilities to succeed. One is preparation for what they're doing. Were they sufficiently prepared for the task that they were given? Or were they thrown into the deep end and expected to swim? Not saying that a deep end approach is wrong, but it can be demotivating for some people. Some people need sufficient preparation. Offering help. If I know that I'm on my own, lots of things can be intimidating. But if I know that I've got support, again, I might feel more comfortable, more confident. Cooperation. If I know that I'm on my own, again, this can be challenging. If I know that I've got help, or that my friends and my partners can help me to do something, I might be more able to succeed. It's important learners know what success means. For those of us who teach exam prep classes, for example, this can be something very familiar. If you work with, for example, teaching ZNO writing for the Ukrainian state school exams, well, one of the biggest challenges for the students is teaching them, well, okay, what is a good ZNO letter? What are you being assessed on? What do you need to do? What do you need to not do? Otherwise, if they don't know what the criterion for success are, how are they going to meet them? They might meet them accidentally, but they might not. And we might also need to consider that success might be different for different learners. I had a learner, for example, many years ago, his name was Bogdan, and he was studying in a CAE preparation group for his C1 exam. The problem was, Bogdan was B2. He had started the course. He started studying for FC. He took the FC, kind of failed it. He got his B1. So he came to a CAE preparation group having just received a B1 exam. And he worked hard, though. He studied hard. He worked hard. He took the exam at the end of the year and he got B2. Well, for some learners, that would be an awful result. They would say, oh my God, no, I failed. How could I do this? For Bogdan, that was an excellent result because Bogdan came into the course with a B1 level and he left with a B2 level. He made progress of 1 year. And then he went on to do the same in a CPE preparation course. Yeah, he came in, he had his B2 certificate in a C2 course. And he worked really hard and he took the CPE and he got, yeah, you guessed it, C1. He's now finishing a master's degree in a German university where he needed a C1 certificate to get in. Success for him looked very different than what it looked like for the rest of the group, but it was still success. And if we had set the same expectations for him in his mind that we had for the others, he would have been devastated. He would have been destroyed. but because he had his own criteria for success that were unique to him, he's done great things now. Providing a model can be helpful. It really helps to see what a successful example looks like. And, well, as much as possible, removing obstacles to learning. So this could mean things like making sure that if we're teaching writing, that our learners have pen and paper if it's an offline classroom, if it's an online classroom, making sure that we're asking them to write and use tools that they're comfortable using. Because if we're asking learners to use tools that are new to them, this could be uncomfortable. They could underperform because they're just not used to doing it the way we want them to do it. So things like setting routines, things like having sufficient preparation time, anything that would prevent the learners from being successful, we need to remove. And part of this involves lesson planning. So this is very general. Let's look at what this might look like in an exam preparation class. So here, I'm going to give an example of a lesson plan. This is going to be very general from exam writing based on these principles. Well, I'm going to need a warmer to get them engaged, a lead in, kind of set the topic. I need to interest them, this choice motivation that we talked about. Okay, great. Then we might introduce learners to the prompt, what they're going to do. So for example, if it's an FCE essay prompt, they'll give them, here's the topic of the essay, here are 2 main points, you need to come up with 1 more. Okay, introduce them, read it together, find the key points, make sure everyone understands the prompt, because this could be an obstacle. If they don't understand the prompt, how are they going to write the correct essay? So we might need to teach them to read them and understand them and look for the key information. Then we might give learners a model of a successful essay to read, just for general understanding. We need them to make sure they understand the whole thing first, then we can analyze it. And then we analyze it. We look at, okay, this is a successful essay. What makes it successful? Okay, well, it's got 5 paragraphs. Okay, 1 paragraph for each key point. Okay, we've got this link or this link. Okay, the style is this. This is what they do in the intro. This is what they do in the conclusion. So that way learners understand these criterion for success. What makes the good example good? We can use this to create a checklist of key points, things to do, because this will also help them monitor their own success. After this, well, an obstacle could be that learners don't have ideas what to write about. So before we start writing, I might let them work together in groups and brainstorm. Okay, let's see. We can talk about this and this, and we can mention this and this here. Once learners brainstorm their ideas, how to answer the prompt, hopefully this should again remove an obstacle. They've got ideas and they know what to write. Learners can draft their own first version, read each other's and give feedback based on the checklist. Again, this is this collaboration. Someone looking at it saying, yeah, this is good, this is good. You might want to include this here. I might need to teach my learners how to do this because most learners, surprisingly, don't know how to do this. So giving them some frames for language they can use. For example, one thing I really like about your essay is, one thing I think you've done really well is, one thing you can improve is, because giving them some language or some expressions that they can use to help them do this, teaching them to give effective feedback is A, going to remove another obstacle, and B, should also facilitate this good cooperation in the classroom. Finally, learners edit their initial drafts before submitting the draft to the teacher for more feedback, because like we said before, they want feedback from us, and we need to give this to them in a timely manner. If my teacher is going to take a month to give me feedback on writing, why should I give it to them on time? I find that when I set the deadlines for my students and I follow my own deadlines, that they're much more engaged and happy to write things, and they typically submit them on time as well. So what is this about? Well, this is all about the role of awareness. And this is all about the role of awareness of what we're doing and how to succeed. But awareness can have another impact as well. you might have seen a look on your face, particularly when you start teaching something like, oh, I don't know, grammar, that looks something like this. Has anyone's teenagers ever looked at them like this? Yeah, this is like the permanent look on my teenager's face, no matter what I do. Adults too, yes, absolutely. They might even tell you something like, but teacher, we know all this stuff. We've studied it already. Especially if you teach a lot of higher levels, because if you teach higher levels, like upper intermediate, you might run across something like this. Here's something I took from a set of materials. It was a lesson on narrative tenses. Past simple, past continuous, past perfect continuous. And the first time I taught this set of materials, my students, they looked at me and like, oh, but Chris, come on, we know all of this stuff. It's past tenses. We've studied this a million. Why are we doing this? Probably not very engaged if they're asking me the question, but Chris, do I really need this today? So in the future, we changed things a bit. This was actually based on a listening text, kind of a mishap about almost missing a film or missing a film in the movie theater. So the second time we listened to the story again, just like we had done the first time. But when I gave them the sentences, I said, okay, well, you know this stuff pretty well, right? You're all smart. Prove it. Here, we've just made one little change. We've actually kind of made it into a little diagnostic test to check whether or not they really understand it. Now, what happened, of course, everyone got number 1 correct because, past simple, that was fine. Everyone got part of number 4 correct, the first one, but numbers 3 and 4, as we had been watching, we had gone, almost all of them got it wrong. I said, oh, wait a second, what's going on here? I said, funny that you should ask. Because they made if we talked earlier about the role of success as a motivating factor, that success breeds success, controlled failure can also be motivating, particularly when I'm a bit overconfident. It shows me that, something is going on here that I'm not aware of. So we checked the answer. We talked about the differences. I asked my questions. Okay, which one happened first? How many events are there? We drew the timelines. And I gave them a few more activities to practice further. But they were more engaged practicing this a bit further because they had seen that they didn't know it as well as they thought they did. And the procedure for this is what we call test. We teach the things they didn't know. We test them again to check their progress. So we give them a gap-filling activity or some sort of activity to check if they really know it. We teach them the things relevant to their mistakes, and then we check whether or not they really got it before moving on to further practice. So, not the most complicated, but it still helps because it shows the learners the gaps in their knowledge and that they need to pay attention. Because while a lack of confidence could be one reason for a lack of motivation, overconfidence can also be a reason for a lack of engagement. If I feel that what I'm doing isn't useful for me, I may not even engage with this choice motivation or this executive motivation. If Jackie feels like jogging every day is not helping her meet her targets, she might change sports. So here, we need to show them the gaps in their knowledge. And it also shows the learners this progress. They should do better on the second test. If we've done our jobs well, and if everything was appropriate for them, they should see progress as well. This is motivating because they say, okay, what did I learn today? I know what I learned today. Because before I did this, and when I left, I was doing this. Cool. I learned something. I want to go back on Monday. It also helps to keep the lesson efficient because we're maximizing the time for learner practice, and we're not wasting time going over all of these things that students don't already, or that students already know. I don't need to explain to a group of upper intermediate students past simple. If they don't know past simple, they're in the wrong group. I don't need to explain to them past continuous. They should know that already. Yeah, I need to check, and if they have problems, it could be useful to revise it. But in this group's case, they had no problems with that. What they needed was past perfect and past perfect continuous. Okay, so that's what we focus on. Prioritizing their needs. And we can also provide the opportunity for learners to help and teach each other. There's no reason that I can't, after having them fill in the gaps, why I can't say, okay, check with a group of 3, try to agree on the best answer. Because now in that group of 3, someone might know past perfect pretty well. This gives them an opportunity to teach the others. It's called the protege effect, where you learn something better by teaching other people to do it. And if they don't know it, that's fine, because we're going to talk about it together anyways. So this gives the chance for help and support to each other as well, again, building this cooperation and community. So if these are the things that help engagement, we need to think about what kills engagement. Because there are things that demotivate students, and very often they're things that we as teachers do, which demotivate students. These could be things like having a bad relationship with us, or not having a good relationship with the teacher. Could be not having a good relationship with the other learners. Maybe I know that Vova and I don't get along, so if I have to work with Vova, I'm going to be like, oh my God, no, Vova again. How long do we have to do this? 5 minutes. Jump out the window before 5 minutes are over. Not receiving attention from the teacher, because they want to have our attention. Using their names in a positive way shows them that we see them, that they're not just a blob to us, that we actually see them as an individual. Only receiving negative attention from the teacher. I need to praise them as well as give them criticism and feedback. Because, well, and I would argue that they need this praise in order to listen to criticism and feedback. Because if I only receive criticism, I'm going to get this impression that the teacher doesn't like me, and then we're back to square one. Public criticism can be demotivating because it's embarrassing. Having our mistakes pointed out in front of the class, for some students is fine. For some students, they want to crawl up into a little ball and die. Because, well, why? Because they're embarrassed. So there's an expression, praise in public, criticize in private. That way you help the student save face. Being overcorrected. Some learners really benefit from a firm hand and lots of correction, and they really want this and they respond really well to it. Some learners get a bit discouraged. I'm of this type. If I'm overcorrected, I get quite discouraged. And it makes me a bit demotivated myself. Some people I know, they're very happy to be corrected. They want this. Getting meaningless feedback. Good feedback tells me not only what I've done wrong, but what I need to do better and how I need to do it better. If I'm just being told that I'm wrong, but I don't know how to make it right, this is frustrating. I don't want to be frustrated. That's not engagement. Not understanding why I'm doing something. If Jackie doesn't know why she's jogging, she's not going to keep doing it. If I don't understand why I need to study something, for example, my upper intermediate students that we talked about earlier, if they don't know why they're studying narrative tenses, they're not going to want to do it. They need to see how it connects with their goals and their aspirations in their lives. Not knowing what to do is incredibly demotivating. Very often, learners may look demotivated and or possibly lazy to us, but it's really because they didn't understand our instructions, that we weren't clear, about what to do. And so they weren't sure. And students don't like uncertainty. So giving good instructions is an important part of motivation. It could be personality mismatch. Not everyone's going to like you and you're not going to like everyone. Maybe at the end of the day, another teacher might suit them better. And not feeling progress and doing the same all the time. Right now, these are things that kill motivation generally. But right now, we're in a bit of a different situation. Because right now we've got, many students who are, for lack of a better word, experiencing trauma at the moment due to forced relocation, due to being in danger. So we also need to look at how engagement might change in a crisis. Let's go back to the basics for this. Here, we can see something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are basically the emotional needs that someone needs to have, or the physical or emotional needs that someone needs to have met in order to do more things. So for example, first and foremost is physiological needs. Do I have air, water, food, shelter? Am I warm enough? Do I have what to eat, or am I hungry? If I have these, I can start worrying about the second thing, which is, am I safe? Is my health in good condition? Do I know what I'm going to do tomorrow? After this, we can start dealing with things like, do I feel cared about? Do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I'm part of a group? And learning can only happen once I've done all of this. Our jobs right now, when working with these populations, and particularly our Ukrainian students, if we work with them online, we're operating at this level of love, belonging, and self-esteem. We need to give them community and a place to be who they are, because we may not be able to provide physiological safety or to meet their physiological needs. If we're teaching them in an offline environment, these also become necessary. I need to make sure they've got a comfortable place to study, that they're warm enough, that they're not hungry. We may have to deal with some of these physiological needs as well. The other thing is what they call the Kubler-Ross change curve. This is whenever we go through an unexpected shock or surprise, the series of emotions that we go through. Shock and denial, followed by anger, followed by trying to bargain our way out, followed by depression, and then acceptance of the situation and moving on. Right now, many of our teenagers especially, may still be in the anger, bargaining, and depression stages. We need to go into the classroom recognizing this. This doesn't mean that we need to treat them differently. This doesn't mean that we need to do things or forgive everything, but it means that we need to take into consideration how this could be affecting their behavior and their engagement. While I was preparing this session, I stumbled across this infographic from Teacher Dress Code, which is a very lovely summary of what lots of psychological research says about how to deal with traumatized populations. And we're going to briefly talk about a few of the main ones. The first one, this is not about me. If you see that your teenagers are not engaged in acting out or something like this, it may have nothing to do with you right now. It may feel like it's all about you, but it may have nothing to do with you. Alternatively, if you're not a Ukrainian teacher and you're working with Ukrainian populations, for example, a German teacher, French teacher who's working with Ukrainian populations, also remember that it's also not about you. Many teachers who work with traumatized populations develop a savior complex, where they want to feel like they're saving the poor children who need their help. That is making their teaching all about them. It's not about us, it's about the students, always. Second, listen to what you see. Students their behaviors may show things that their words aren't telling you. So they might say they're okay, but watch them and see if they're really okay or not. And think about what their behavior might be trying to tell you. Remember, if you start to get upset and you start to feel frustrated, that you might also be dealing with some problems. So taking deep breaths. A couple of other key points here is that, they may lash out and attack other people because they're themselves feeling hurt. Be prepared for this and be prepared to talk to them about it. Not as a disciplinary way, but as a, what's going on? All good? Well, why are we doing this? And I think one very important one is what will engage them to make them forget. There's a bit of research into our psychology. What they find is that when we remember events, we don't actually remember the event itself. We remember the story the last time we told a story about the event. And every time we tell stories about events, we repeat the experience in our minds, and that becomes the new experience in our brain. What this effectively means is that when we ask someone to talk about a traumatic experience, we at a psychological level ask them to re-experience the same thing. For some people, this could be therapeutic, and this could help them to get past what they're going through. For some people, this could just be traumatizing them again. Which means that what many people are going to be looking for when they come to the English classes is not a place to kind of relive what they've been through, but they want to feel normal for some time. So you may even have a policy that you can talk about what's going on before class and after class all you want, but during class, unless someone really needs to talk about what's going on, let's make this a safe place where that doesn't exist. This is where we feel normal for an hour, or for an hour and a half. Some learners may need this. At the end of the day, as Martin Ford says, there are no magic motivational buttons. What we're trying to do at the end of the day, when we try to motivate our students, is facilitate this engagement. We want to create the environment for them to be engaged and guide them to do it, but we can't force them to engage with anything. We've covered a lot of information, a lot. The question might be, okay, God, that's so much. How do I keep track of all of this? Gieto and Dornier came up with a scheme in 2008, this motivation orientation for language learners, or MOLT. The first thing to look at is your discourse as a teacher. Are you working to arouse attention? Are you promoting autonomy? Are you giving them purpose? Are you making your aims clear? Thinking about how learners are working. How are they participating in the classroom? Are they working individually or in pairs, sitting or standing? Are all learners participating equally? Thinking about if the tasks are competitive or collaborative. Is there enough challenge? Is there a clear product or result? And encouraging self-reflection. The learners being praised, are they being praised authentically and evaluating their own work or language? Are learners being provided with an opportunity to notice their own progress? Here you can see the references. I think we've got time probably for 1 or 2 questions. So feel free to type them in the chat. Are there any questions regarding motivation before we go on to the next session? Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Absolutely. Thank you all for giving your precious time today and being with us.
Am I taking over?
Yes, looks like no questions. So I'm going to make you the host.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So nice to hear. When I listen to you, it calms me down.
Yeah, there's one little question, if you don't mind if I answer it.
Of course.
Someone's asked how to work with kids who don't have enough attention span. Oh, Lida, you can help me out with this one as our YL super guru.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest here?
First of all, you need to use attention grabbers.
Yeah.
Next, you have to have clear routines that students understand. So they understand what's going on, what you're going to do, what you need from them. And you need to see like how they feel and change the activities often enough from settling to stirring. So as long as they can keep their attention, so you can do something. If they lose attention, there is no point continuing doing it.
Yeah. Think about little chunks of activities, not big, long activity, not big, long tasks like you might give to a group of adults, but little chunks of activities. And if you see that they're getting a bit bored, One thing that I often do, especially if I'm teaching offline, is I like to think in my head of an active, like stirring, and passive settling version of each activity. That way, when I'm in the lesson, I can make a choice. Okay, they're getting a bit bored. Let's stir them up a little bit. And I already know what I'm going to do. And I think to myself, okay, they're getting a little bit crazy. So everyone sits down, does it individually for a couple of minutes.
Exactly.
So having a plan A and B can be helpful here as well. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, maybe there are other questions, so please feel free to answer. So it's okay.
I think it's ready. I think they're ready for you, Lidiya.
Okay, thank you. So I'm taking over. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to see familiar faces and new faces. Again, you can turn your cameras on because I'm in Kiev now, so apparently my internet is better than Chris's German internet, which is good. Or you can keep working without cameras. Because there are so many people today, I will not ask you to discuss anything in breakout rooms, but I will ask you, if you feel like it, please react in the chat. So that will be our communication. You can actually unmute yourself and say something. That is also fine. It's okay to ask questions. And remember, our main rule today is there are no stupid questions. Okay. Today we're talking about how to switch into English in class, how to use English, and how to help students use English in class. So how we can do that, I'll try to share with you. So first of all, let's think why students avoid using English. I have put a couple of possible reasons on my slide. If you agree with my reason, can you please put a plus in the chat? If you disagree, you can put a minus in the chat, or you can ask me a question. So my first reason is students don't know how to express their thoughts in English. If you agree with me, please react in the chat. Thank you. I see lots of pluses and one yeah. Thank you. So no minuses so far. All right. Yula disagrees. Yula, you can say what you think about this, or you can just write a couple of words in the chat. Okay, thank you. The next, Zhenya also disagrees. All right. Yes and no. Yeah, of course, everything is difficult, people, but still very often people don't use English because they don't know how to express themselves. I see a couple of no's. Okay, so guys, remember, you can write something in the chat. I will react. But I see lots of pluses as well. The next reason, so students might not use English in class because they keep asking for some words and phrases while saying something in English. And this prevents them from using English. They sometimes just use, I don't know, their native words, words from their native language or something like this. If this doesn't happen in your class, this is very cool, but this might happen. Okay. Thank you for your reactions. Yes, using teacher as a translator, exactly. And this is really, really irritating, and it's really pointless. If you translate a word for them, they will forget it 30 seconds later, so they will not really learn. Okay, next reason, something that I think happens sometimes, students are afraid to make a mistake. Again, it doesn't mean that they are afraid to make a mistake in your class. We're talking about students as students. They might not say something because they are afraid to make a mistake. Oh, lots of pluses here. And some of them, all right. Okay, a couple of minuses. If topic is unfamiliar, yeah, I agree with you. Lidiya, yes, exactly. Okay. Again, I see that there is a comment. They're not able to put their difficult thoughts. Yes. So please remember that our students do not learn only in our classes. They have lots of other lessons. at school, at university. So their learning is affected not only by the way you teach, but also by the other teachers and what happens in other classes as well. Thank you for your reactions. Next, they know some or a lot of words and grammar structures, but they don't or cannot use them in speech. Again, if you think this is one of the reasons, please put a plus. If you disagree, put a minus, or you can write a comment. Thank you. Okay. So here I see yes and no. In some cases, it can be true. In other cases, this is not a problem. And we will talk about why this could be a problem in some cases, because you might have a new student who comes to your class and they cannot really speak, and you have to do something about it. I like this comment, definitely, maybe. Thank you very much. Okay, one more reason, one more comment. Students translate every word in their mind. Could it be the reason why they cannot speak English normally, or why they avoid using it, or why it's difficult to speak English? Thank you. Okay, and the last comment from me, direct method at school. Thank you, Vita, yes. I agree with Oksana, who says that a lot of students do not have an opportunity to practice the words that they learn. Yes, and we will talk about this later. Okay, the last one that I have here is students see no need in using English in lessons. If you think it's a problem sometimes, put a plus, disagree, put a minus, or write a comment. Okay, I like to see the minuses. It means that your students are motivated and you don't have this problem, which is very good. But who knows, you might be working with colleagues who have this problem, and you might be able to really help them. Okay, if you think, I like the comments like it's common knowledge that English should be spoken by everyone. I agree with you. Say it to a 13-year-old teenager who faces puberty and problems, and he doesn't care about your lesson, or she. So this common knowledge doesn't always help. Or say this to kids who come to your class to have fun, not to speak English. Okay, so if you think that there are some problems, reasons that I haven't mentioned here, can you please add them to the chat? Zhenya Chernyatsky says that sometimes students don't know what to say. This is a very good reason. And we will talk about this a bit later, how to help students express themselves. Thank you very much for your comment, Zhenya. All right. So, we're going to look at these reasons today. Natalie gives a very good comment, because there are no set rules. Yeah, Natalie, you're right, because in many cases, so rules are very important and they help students speak English, and we will talk why. Low self-esteem to talk. Alona, this is also a very good comment. And this is something that Reese was talking about. So we need to show students that we value them. They need to feel that they are important. And in that case, they will speak more. It's faster and easier for them to explain something in their first language. Tanya, exactly. I absolutely agree with you here. Yes, this is a very good reason. Some people say they're lazy. Yes, some students are lazy and they don't have the urge to express themselves in a classroom context. Yes. Thank you, Adrian. Is it Adrian Underhill? Wow, so good to see you here. Well, that flatters me. Okay, so we're going to look at my comments, and we're going to discuss what we can do to help students overcome the difficulties and speak English. And we will also talk about how to help teachers speak English and not rely on the first language of the students a lot. So first of all, Like the first reason that I mentioned, students don't know how to say something in English. The first thing that you can do, very obvious, is you need to teach the classroom language, because we teach grammar and vocabulary that is in our course book. We practice it. But then when a student wants to go out, or they want to ask you for something or comment on something that is happening in class, very often they say it in their first language because they don't know the phrases that they can use. So first of all, teach your students how to communicate with the teacher. Here are the examples of the phrases. For example, what is it in English? Or what's the English for? Can I have a something? Can you help me with something? And you can actually teach these phrases starting from the first lessons, even with the lowest level of students. And they can start operating English in order to communicate with you and to deal with some problems that are happening in class. So this is very important. So you need to start your course with teaching the classroom language. And this is not the language to communicate with the teacher. This is also the language to help students communicate with each other, because we have lots of pair work. And this is a typical problem when you put students in pairs or groups. They start talking to each other in their first language. It's easier, it's faster. Why this happens? Because they don't know the phrases that they can use. And this is a good idea to teach them the phrases like, can I start? Whose turn is it? Can you repeat? I agree with you. And so on and so forth. Any phrases that you need your students to use together. So depending on their needs. And if you teach them to use them, if you encourage your students to use these phrases, they will just use them in pairs. So they will not switch to their first language, but without knowing the classroom language phrases, you cannot expect your students to speak English really. So this is very important. Next, you need to teach and drill these useful phrases. If you say a phrase once, and students do not repeat it after you, if they don't know what they mean, if they forget the phrase, they will not use it. But if you really teach the phrase, students understand what it means, in which situation to use it. You have drilled it many times, so it's automatic when they say it. So they have no problems using the phrase. Of course, students forget classroom language, especially because it's a lot of phrases they have to learn. But what we can do is we can put the phrases on the walls. We can point to them to remind students to use them in class. So what usually happens if a student says something in their first language, and I know that they know the phrase, and there is a phrase on the wall, what I will do is I will look at my student and point to the phrase and smile. So they need to say it again in English. And in that case, if you teach your students to use English, and if you show to your students, if you encourage them to use English, and if there are phrases that you know that they know, they will do it. A very typical mistake, maybe not a mistake, but problem, very often teachers react to the phrases that students say in their own language, despite the fact that they can say the same in English. And students know that it doesn't matter which language they will use, the teacher will react. I don't usually, I don't make it a common practice in my class, because I know that a student can say this in English. I know that they know the phrase. I know that they can say it very well. I will ask you to say it in English again. So I will not just talk to my student like he speaks to me Ukrainian, I will speak to them in English. This doesn't happen in my class. So this is another demotivating moment that encourages like lazy students or students who do not see a lot of value in this, use their own language and not switch into English. So teach your students how to use the classroom language phrases and encourage them to use the phrases in class. If you do it, I'm sure that even if it doesn't solve the problem completely, it will help a lot. Yeah, so there is a So the Philip comment that lack of discipline in class usually leads to students ending up in their comfort zone. Exactly. This is another point that you need to keep in mind, because you have to have very clear rules and routines, and we will talk about it a little later. If there is no rule, please speak English in class. If you do not follow this rule, if you do not remind about this rule, students will not follow it. They will speak the language that they feel like speaking. So this is the problem. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do, if you want your students to operate English in class, teach them the language, teach the phrases. The phrases have to be in front of them. They have to see them, they have to hear them, and they have to know that you will demand using them and encourage using them. Like this is the example of the classroom language that you can just make in 30 seconds using a piece of paper and a marker. And this is the poster that I took a picture of in one of the great classrooms. So very easy to do. The next point is students are afraid to make a mistake. This is, again, it doesn't mean that I'm putting a blame on you on being monsters who scare the students who are afraid to make mistakes. But remember that, especially if you know a Ukrainian learning context, that mistakes are never a good thing. So this is something that you mustn't do in class. When we talk about learning at school and so on, if I make a mistake, this is not a good thing. And this is something that I have to avoid. And they come to your class, even if you're a very friendly teacher and making a mistake is not a crime in your class. A lot of students have this notion in their heads, and it's very difficult to get rid of. So still we have to do, and we can do something to help students not be afraid to make a mistake. The first thing that you need to think of is what are your tasks that you do in class aimed at? Are they aimed at accuracy or fluency? So accuracy means controlled practice. For example, put the verbs into the past simple verb form, or open the brackets, or something like this. The second is fluency via practice. For example, this is the speaking task after students have learned some portion of language, some grammar or vocabulary, and you set up a speaking task. They have to discuss something. If students make mistakes in the target language that you're teaching and they're learning, do you have to correct them? Please put a plus or a minus in the chat. Do you have to correct students if they make mistakes in the target language? Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. If, yes, Andrea, I understand like what you mean. This is a debatable question, but what I'm trying to say, if students make mistakes in the target language and they keep making the mistake, so probably something is wrong with our presentation. Maybe they misunderstood something. We have to teach them one more time, or maybe, so very often this is the teacher's mistake. So we did something wrong, but we have to help students say it right if they make mistakes. If you have a fluency speaking task and students make occasional mistakes, but this is not the target language probably, or probably there are not many mistakes. And you want your students to keep talking. You want them to practice the skill. You want them to speak. Is it a good idea to correct them all the time? Again, you can put a minus or a plus. Better not to interrupt. Thank you, Natalie. No, of course. Yeah, thank you for your reactions. But does it mean that if they have a speaking task and we don't want to interrupt them, does it mean that we do not correct at all and just let them use the language, like whatever language they want, and make mistakes and just be happy that they're speaking? Delayed data correction. Thank you, Daria. So we have some ideas here. So we can correct them, but we don't have to interrupt them. So there are ways to do correction, but not to make it that scary, that every word is examined. My teacher will interrupt me if I say something wrong and I will feel bad about it. We can avoid that. So what we can do, we can correct errors differently, and we can use sensitive correcting techniques. For example, you already mentioned delayed error correction. So it means that you collect some errors, mistakes that you hear while students are speaking. And during the feedback, at the end of the lesson, you can write down the sentences on board with mistakes, and you can ask students to correct them and think about them. Okay, there are other ways for error corrections. For example, it can be a personalized error correction. What you can do is you can actually focus on different students, and during the lesson follow one student and like discreetly write down what you notice, like what mistakes they make. And after the lesson is over, you can give them that piece of paper and say, oh, these are a couple of mistakes that I noticed. Can you please have a look at home and correct them? This also works, and it doesn't work with all the students. Some of them can be very sensitive about this thing. So if you know that your students will appreciate that, you can do it. So it means that you might help students with the typical mistakes that they make, but maybe this is not a very good idea to address them in front of all the class or talk about them. So you can do that personal error correction at times. Another thing that you could do is non-personalized error correction, because very often what happens if you write down a sentence at the end of the lesson and you see that a student says, oh, I made this mistake, which is not a very good thing, because again, we can offend a person and they can start thinking like the teacher doesn't like me, or they can be afraid of making a mistake again. So it's a good idea to change something in the sentence and make it anonymous so that the person doesn't really recognize that this is the mistake that they made. And again, this is a typical joke that a lot of teachers know. You've depersonalized the sentence, you write it, or you can even make it up. And still some students can say, oh, this is something that I said. So this is very funny, but this sometimes happens. But please do not make the sentences obviously with the author, so that the person knows that this is the mistake that they made. Okay. Yes, I agree with Adrian that upgrading what they say has a different feel. Yes, this is another side. This is not finding out what we said wrong, but this is also upgrading, thinking what we can say better. So this is another way to help students improve their language. And in that case, yeah, that's a good idea. What else I have here is you can introduce self and peer correction. This is something that I do in my class. It works very well with kids. For example, when they write a dictation, for example, you can show a flashcard and they need to write a word on a piece of paper. After that, you ask them, please open up your course book. Look at your words and look at the words in the course book and check the spelling. And this is how you teach students correct their work and check spelling mistakes. And again, this is something not scary, because this is not what a teacher does. And this is something that I personally like, because when students correct themselves, they're attentive to their spelling, for example, and they really look at if they spelled the words right and they correct themselves. And when the teacher corrects them, they do not always pay attention to what you corrected. They just get upset that they made a mistake. Another way to do it is what I often did, and I continue doing that. When students do some writing, I can underline some sentences or words. And I can say to my students, okay, now you have 5 minutes, you can have a look at what I have underlined. If you correct some mistakes here, you will get a better score. I will give you more points. And this is really motivating to the students because, again, if I correct everything myself, it doesn't really help my students learn. So they just, okay, they wrote a test, they see at the writing part, the teacher has corrected something and put them some points. They will not learn from this. But if I ask my students to correct themselves, and if I know that they can do it, this is something they have learned, and I know that they can do it. And if they do correct themselves and I give them more points, I'm very happy because I know that they learned something. And like giving a couple of points in a task, so it doesn't make a lot of difference for the result, but it's very motivating. And I'm pleased because I see that I know that I made my students look at their writing task and improve something. When we talk about peer correction, you can also introduce it to the students, like when they, for example, exchange the works and check something, like check spelling or correct something. But you have to be very, very careful about this, because if students hate it, do not introduce it. They might not tolerate that their peer is checking their work. And you have to have a very, very clear checklist. Because there are students who are over enthusiastic and they start correcting everything because they like playing roles of a teacher. But if there is a checklist, for example, you have to look at using the past simple or looking at spelling only, it really helps control the peer correction. I'm not a big fan of peer correction, but I sometimes do it. So maybe it will work. And again, why this is important? When students correct each other, it helps you introduce the idea in class that making a mistake is not a crime. It's not something terrible. Making a mistake, this is a natural thing. And again, something that I stole from Adrian Underhill, mistakes are syllable. If your students do not make mistakes, something's wrong. And this is the perfect situation that never happens in life. But mistakes, actually, they are important. And if students know that making a mistake is not a crime, that it's okay if they make a mistake when they're speaking, when they're writing, and if a mistake doesn't cause any reaction, strong reaction, like mockery or something like this. So it helps students express themselves and not be afraid to speak. Okay, so we talked about mistakes. The next thing we can have a look at is students keep asking to translate. I really like the phrase from the chat. Somebody wrote that the teacher is used as a translator. And this is the worst role of a teacher, I think, possible, because we have Google Translate. And why would you come to my class and pay money if you just want me to translate the words from you? And the other students are just sitting and not doing anything. So what we can do, can you please have a look at these two tasks? So we have the first task, talk to your partner and tell them, what did you do yesterday? The second, look at the list, tell your partner what you did and didn't do yesterday from the list. How many matches have you got? If you can, if you feel like, can you please write down what do you think the main difference is between the tasks, and which task is likely to cause problems and asking for translation. Second is better, you limit their, yes, I limit their language. The first one, finish your idea. They have ideas, words to use, thank you. The second task also provides language, exactly. Problems will be with the first. I agree with you, Yulia. Exactly. So if I know that my students start using their first language, like they just do it and it's very difficult to make them speak English. What I as a teacher can do is I can really focus the task and I can provide the limitations that on the one hand prevent my students from asking me to translate, and on the other hand, that will make them use the language that they know. So I really, really like such tasks with students who lose their focus and start talking about something else. Yes, Anastasia, I totally agree with you. So they're more likely to talk if they're given some phrases to choose from. So I focus them on their target language, and it really helps because there are no reasons to use the first language, because it means that they know the vocabulary for different activities and they know the grammar, past simple, and I want them to use both. And I don't want them to use the first language. So here are a couple of more examples to show you that you can focus your students. If you say, tell your partner what fruit and vegetables you add during the weekend, again, I'm focusing them on fruit and vegetables, because if I say, what did you eat yesterday? And they don't know a lot of food words, they will start asking you, what's the English for borscht, lasagna, and so on. And you don't want that because they lose focus. Or for example, remember for different places that you saw while you were traveling to school, to the office. Encourage students to use the target language and create opportunities for them to use the target language and not talk about something they don't know how to say. It doesn't mean that you only have to focus on the target language and not allow your students to move 5 centimeters to the left and to the right, because this is something we want them to do. We want them to experiment with the language and to use it in a natural way. So what we can do is we can actually teach our students to get by with what they have. Very similar, very simple is we teach students to paraphrase. For example, I was looking for this device in the kitchen that you use to cook pasta. They might know the word, not the word strainer, but if they paraphrase, so they don't have to ask you for a translation, they don't have to break the conversation with their partner. So paraphrasing, this is something that you can teach your students. Very similar, simple activity for that. This is something that I like practicing in my class. I like that revision when you cut a lot of strips of paper with the vocabulary that students have been learning. And at the beginning, they have to take a strip and they have to give a definition to their partner, and their partner guesses the word. Very simple thing. It helps students revise the vocabulary, but still it's more practicing of paraphrasing. But that's a good thing, and I really like it. So next is I would like to talk about how to teach students to skip the translation stage, because this is something, this is actually a skill, a very, very it's a really unnecessary skill that a lot of English teachers teach our students just because this is the traditional way that we were taught when we were at school. This is the method that I was taught when I was learning at school, because I graduated from a Ukrainian school, and I had a very good experience of traditional grammar translation method. So I'm one of them, and this is something that I did, and this is something how I started teaching my students, because I didn't have another role model. But it doesn't mean that you cannot change the situation. What you can do is, first of all, when you teach, translate only if absolutely necessary. I can say that I only speak not English only when I have an emergency situation, like one of my kids is trying to jump out of the window. Then I will start shouting in Ukrainian, definitely. Or they try to stick their fingers through the socket, or they try to kill each other. I'm exaggerating, but I'm only starting talking in L1 if this is an absolutely emergency situation. And this happens very, very rarely, believe me. I can say that when I teach my students English, I only translate 2 words for them. 2. You can guess the words if you like, and write down what do you think are the words that I translate into English that are easier for me to translate than to teach them without translation. Any guesses? Dictionary. I can show a dictionary, Tanya, and I don't need to teach to translate it. I just show it and I say, guys, it's a dictionary. But that's a good guess. Unless, this is a very good word. I still managed to teach it without translation. Voila, but that's a challenging one. Thank you. Ditto. What is this? maybe I don't know the word. Otherwise, Olga, another good idea. Still, I managed to teach it without translation. Okay, I will tell you. There are two words that I translate for my students. These are however and although, because they have a very precise translation in Ukrainian, and I don't have to do very difficult things like this one is to contrast ideas and this one to contrast parts of the sentences, blah, blah, blah. Gee, thank you for the detail. Yes, so there are two words only in my career that I translate into English, or I provide my students with translation. And probably this is the first and the last time they hear me speaking not English, which is a good thing. Okay, yes, Yula, it helps save time. This is the only reason why I translate these words. So please translate only if absolutely necessary, because if you translate, it means that why would students need to think what your English phrase means if you repeat it in your language? Why would students need to listen to your English if you repeat your instruction in their language, in Ukrainian or any other language that they use? Why? There is no need. So we need to skip the translation stage, because this is an extra operation in your students' minds. And learning English is already difficult. Why would they need to translate all the time? So you give them extra work. But still, there are ways to avoid that. Very important. Teach in chunks and meaningful phrases. When we start learning English, how old are you? How old are you? How old are you? We learn the whole phrase. We know exactly what it means. We don't need to translate the word how, old, are, and you. So students need to learn the language in portions. And this helps, skips translation, because if they know the phrase, if they can say it, if they know exactly in which situation to use it, if they know that if they asked, how are you today? I'm fine. They will just say that I'm fine automatically, and they will not think about the translation. So teach your students in chunks and meaningful phrases. And they need to know the meaning of the phrase and the situation on when to use it and how to use it. If you compare these things, if you teach your students a doctor, a patient, ill, and flu, they might have problems putting them into sentences. But if you teach visit a doctor, examine a patient, fall ill, get ill, feel ill, get flu, have flu. So students will automatically use the whole phrase and not think how to say this in English. Next important thing, you need to teach through context without translation, and how to do it, I will show you a little bit later. But I will do it. I hope that we'll have enough time for that. So yes, skip translation. And before we continue, I wanted to also discuss with you, why do teachers use the first language in class? Because a lot of teachers do it, not because they don't know English, but because there are other reasons for that. Yeah, I have the first comment from that's easier. In many ways, yes, thank you. Less time, in some cases, yes. On the one hand, I agree with you. On the other hand, if you do not use English, you will teach them longer. It saves time, like it saves you a minute of your lesson, but it continues the course. Students will take longer to learn in that way. Yeah, old school teachers, probably yes, or I would say that probably they don't know how. This is also a different reason, an important reason, because a lot of teachers do not know how they can do it. Reassurance, maybe. Here are my points from my presentation. Again, put a minus or a plus if you agree or disagree with me. Yeah, lack of confidence. This is also an issue sometimes. Okay. So here is the first point. A lot of teachers use the first language to explain grammar. If you agree with that, put a plus. Of course, it's so much easier to explain how to use present perfect in Ukrainian than to do a difficult presentation in English and help students understand. Students don't know the meaning of a one. Sometimes it's better to explain in English. Yeah, that's a very good observation. I do so as well. Oksana, no problem. There are lots of teaching methods, and all of them are effective, more or less, or more effective in one cases and less effective in other cases. This is not a crime, absolutely. So a lot of teachers use English to translate or explain the meaning of lexes, because some of the words are difficult. Some of the words do not have the equivalents in our language. And so a lot of teachers can translate because it's easier, probably it's faster, and to explain the shades of meaning. If you agree with me, please put a plus, that many teachers use the first language to help students understand the meaning of lexes. Thank you for your reactions. Next point, a lot of teachers use translation because this is part of their teaching methodology, like drama translation. I will not even ask you to put a plus, because this is our normal life, that a lot of teachers teach like this. This is our traditional method in Ukraine, and it's okay. I mean, there is no way it will not disappear, and nobody says that it's always bad. It has its good sides as well. So, but still, it encourages you to use the first language because this is part of the methodology. Next, sorry, teachers are afraid students will not understand. This is an important point, and I would like to ask you to give me a reaction on that. What do you think? Lots of applauses here, thank you. Because this is the typical reason when I talk to teachers and when I ask them, like, why don't you use English? Why do you have to use so much of the first language? They say, I'm afraid my students will not understand. This is a very typical phobia for a teacher, plus minus. Okay, thank you, Olga. Yeah, so it's the matter of debate as well. If you know other reasons why teachers why teachers use the first language instead of English, you can write down in the chat. Yeah, so Oksana says that some students aren't aware of some basic lexes. Yes, Oksana, you're right. But it means that probably you either teach a very low level of students, or you have a mixed ability group where part of the students understand everything and the other part they're lost because they don't understand. Not a very good situation. Okay, I'm waiting for your reasons, and you might, even in native language, yes, agree with you, Julia. So they might not know meta language, and it's actually also possible to avoid that in many ways and teach them without this. But again, you need to know how. So I wanted to show you a couple of things. First of all, can you tell me what plant is this? Sorry. What's the plant in the picture? Can you write that? Yes, watermelon. Thank you, Alona. So what kind of, did I have to translate the word? No, of course not. Why? I have a picture. I can show it to my students. So why would you translate such words as chair, table, wall, window? Why? You see them in every class. Why would you translate body parts? You can show them, like you can show what is a hand, what is an arm, what is a leg, what is a head. So in that case, there's no need to translate. Can you tell me what the cat is doing? Can you write that down, please? Yeah, thank you, Anastasia. The cat is yawning. Am I yawning now? Sorry for that. Yes, I'm yawning. So do I have to translate this? No, because I can use my body language. I can use different gestures. I can demonstrate things. I can show the picture of a yawning cat. I can yawn myself. So there is no need to translate in that case. All right, can you have a look at my arrow with the words cold, cool, warm, hot, and have the word boiling. So boiling, is it very hot or very cold? You don't have to answer that question. Yeah, it's definitely very hot because I have a clear line and my students know cold, cool, warm, hot. And when they see the word boiling, and of course I have it in red as well. So I'm showing my students a graph, right? So a scale, and I help my students understand the meaning of the word by this. I can also give a definition or an explanation. What do you call a person who works at school and helps students learn English? You don't have to answer that question. I gave you a definition, it's a teacher. I can also ask you, what is the synonym to smart? And you can tell me it's like intelligent or witty. So I can use synonyms, or I can ask you, what is the opposite to ugly? I can use synonyms and antonyms to teach students new words. I don't have to translate them. And of course, very important and something that is probably the most difficult out of the list is you can teach students to deduce meaning from context. And I will help you and I will show you how to do it if you don't know. So first of all, have a look at these two friends. This is Toby and Milky. So Toby is a street cat, so he doesn't have a very pleasant life. And he sometimes visits Milky when he's in the window sunbathing, and they have a chat. So can you please have a look at their conversation and answer these two questions? Is this the first time Milky does something forbidden at home? And is he afraid of his master? Can you please just give me the answer like plus, plus, minus, 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 plus? Or yes, no. Thank you, Yula. And that was while you're giving me the answer, there was a comment that sometimes definition is more difficult than the word. Yes, and you have to be careful. This is a very good comment. You need to make sure that the language in the definition that you use is not more difficult than the language that you teach. This is a very good comment, thank you. Okay, and I have the answers about Milky and Toby. Yes, this is not the first time Toby is doing something wrong because Milky is doing something wrong. Toby is saying that this is the third flower pot. And he's not afraid because he says that every time she says she will spank me, but she never does. So tell me, please, if somebody threatens you, do they say they will do something good or something bad to you? Please give me a plus or a minus. Thank you, Daria, bad. But do they actually do it? Or do they just say they will and they never do? They don't do it. Okay, so have you ever threatened to your students or your kids or your animals? Okay. And what part of speech is that, threaten? Okay, it's a verb. Do you think it's a regular or irregular verb? Yeah, it's regular. So you can say threatened. And I skipped the pronunciation part. Please forgive me because it's difficult to drill more than 100 people. So to threaten, do you think this word really exists? It doesn't, I made it up. We have that like saying in English, like this is the last Chinese warning. This is when you warn a person. This is the warn the person to do something, that you will do something, you will punish them, but you never do and you warn them again. So I made a fusion of two words, threaten and China. So threaten. Again, but did you understand the meaning of the word threaten? Was it clear for you? Do you think that I have to translate the words to teach them? And do you think it's possible to teach grammar without translation? Well, it's actually possible. We don't have much time to do it now for me to show you how to do it, but yes, it's possible. But here comes a very important question. So I taught you the word stretching. I didn't translate it for you. I didn't ask you to translate. How do I know that you really understand what stretching means? Do you remember I asked you some questions? If somebody stretches you, do they tell you they will do something good or something bad to you? Do they really do it or not? What kind of questions are these? Yeah, so these are CCQs. These are concept checking questions. So I asked you questions to check if you understood the concept of that word, the concept of this lexis. Can I ask you to give me antonyms or synonyms to something? What is the synonym to tasty or to mouth-watering or antonyms? I can also ask you to give me an example. Can you give me an example of a vehicle? Yeah, thank you for your delicious and yummy. Yeah, car, exactly. I can actually ask you to show me how you yawn, show me how you jump, clap your hands. If this is something you can show, I can ask you to demonstrate this or point to something like point to the picture with an apple, point to the table. So I can use reality. So there are lots of ways for me to see if students understand what I teach them, even if this is something that doesn't exist. So it's possible to teach without translation. And I hope that if you haven't done it before, you will give it a try because it's really, really cool. One more important things that I would like to talk to you about is if you want your students to use English in class, it's very important to develop all skills because a language skill is the way in which language is used. If your students do not use the language, it means that they don't speak. So you have to think about the skills. And actually, you have to think about all of them because most communication is interactive. It means that if you talk to someone, you listen to them and you say something and you need to understand each other. So you have to say something and you have to understand what the person is saying in order to communicate. Same with writing. You text to people, you write them, I don't know, messages in Facebook or something. So you have to be a competent reader and a competent writer in order to communicate with each other. So if you do not develop skills, it means that students don't have the chance to use the language and they don't have the chance to practice English and become competent language users, if we can say that. So do not neglect the skills. And here comes the question. If you have to use grammar translation method, if you don't know how to do it differently, if you are used to reading sentence by sentence or, I don't know, piece by piece and translating it, can you do it differently? Is it possible to practice skills without translation? I want to show you something. I like your comments, sure. Thank you very much. So first of all, who is this person? Can you please write a name? This is Elon Musk, exactly. And so you know that Elon Musk, he's an ingenious person, like he's a very bright businessman, like the prominent, and he runs a lot of companies. Can you think of the companies that he runs? Like, for example, recently, and we're very grateful to him because he provided a lot of Starlink dishes to Ukraine, and he provided our military with the internet. Yeah, SpaceX, Tesla, right? The Boring Company, Ilona. Yeah, exactly. Can you please have a look at this text and tell me which company is this text about? Please write your answer in the chat. Yeah, it's Tesla. Exactly. And here you can see 4 numbers. Can you please tell me what does this 5.5 stand for? Yeah, it's money, but money for what? What kind of? What costs 5.5 million? Yeah, it's dollars. Yeah, the new factory. This is the price of a new factory. Exactly. So if I ask you to find what the other numbers mean, will you do it? Will you be able to understand what the numbers stand for? Just say yes or no. Thank you. Question. What language is that? I mean, the text is written. Is it English? Is it German, French, Polish? Maybe Hungarian, Spanish, French. It's not Polish. Romanian, made up. Esperanto, exactly. This is Esperanto. I was looking for the language that probably nobody knows, and I was using it. Why have I just done this to you? What was my purpose? We feel, yes, exactly. First of all, to put you in your students' shoes, and I can show you. No, it's not like something you can understand universally. I was just trying to show you that you didn't have to understand the text, I mean, the language, but you were able to do the task because you're competent readers, because you know how to find the information in the text. And because this is Esperanto, so it has like similar roots to other European languages. So you deciphered the information. And of course, my task was manageable and doable. I knew that you would understand that it's about the money, the factory, Tesla, and so on. Again, but you were able to do the task not because you know the language, not because you translate, but because you are the expert readers. And this is something that we can teach our students. We teach them not to translate what they see. We teach them to find the information in texts and understand them. Do you think it's only reading? Can we do the same with listening? Yeah, it was pure reading activity, exactly. Yeah, we can do the same with the listening. So my question was, do you really need to understand and to translate the reading text? No, you don't. Please don't draw on my screen. The last thing that you need to remember, that you have to speak English in class, because if you don't do it, if you switch into the first language or into your student's language and you don't use English, why would your students use it? And so English has to be the rule, the routine. You have to teach your students how to use it. You have to help students use it, encourage them to use it. And so if you follow the advice that I provided, it will definitely help you use more English in class and help your students more English in class. A couple of words, let's keep in touch. So we're in Telegram, in Instagram, in Facebook. So please stay with us. Thank you very much for coming here. If you have questions, please do write your questions in the chat. I will just say a couple of words. I never thought I would face the war in Ukraine. This was the same bit of a shock for me as for everybody else. I'm now in Kiev. It's sometimes threatening because of the explosions and so on. But what I wanted to say that I really enjoyed that hour and that 2 hours because I was listening to Chris, because it helped me get back to my normal life. And if you know that doing the things, the usual things, the everyday routines, this is something that creates the safety environment for all, for adults, especially for kids. And when you continue teaching in that terrible times, it means that you put your students back to normal life, at least temporarily. This is the first important thing. You are very important. What you do is very important. What I wanted to say is, please take care. I guess I learned to appreciate small things. I'm very happy to have water in my tap. I'm very happy to have electricity. I'm very happy to wake up in my bed and still know that my family is alive. My house is there, so it's not ruined. I'm very happy that I have food and I'm healthy now. So it means that I will survive that war and you will survive that war and we will win. Take care about your families. Do the small usual things. Stay positive and believe in the future. And our future will be wonderful. We just have to wait and we just have to win and build it together. So thank you very much for coming to us today, for talking to us. I will have a look if you have questions there. Yeah, everything will be Ukraine. Thank you very much. By the way, Chris, I think that this is a very cool day because it's not us visiting Adrian Underhill's webinar. It's Adrian Underhill visiting our chats. And probably this is one of the most prominent moments of my life. So questions. Yeah, I don't see questions. I will scroll down. Yeah, probably there are no questions. So thank you very much, Chris. Will you say a couple of words? You're muted. Chris, please unmute. I muted you. Did I?
Okay, thank you. Now that you've taken the gag out of my mouth, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming today. It's been a pleasure to be here with all of you, for you to take time out. We really hope that today's kind of given you a bit of normalcy and something that's, well, hopefully brightened up your day a little bit and hopefully kind of inspired you to go brighten up the days of your students as well. So it's gonna be a tough bit of time ahead, but keep your chins up and we'll all make it through.
We will.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Lida, for your wonderful sessions. I also want to thank all the participants who joined us today. And as I'm a marketing specialist, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just waving to Ivona because she was my Delta buddy. And
oh my God, Ivona!
Okay.
Just say hello to people.
Okay. Okay, sorry for that. I'm a marketing specialist, so now a little bit of marketing, but we've been working for all the teachers from Ukraine and all around the world who know and don't know about Great Education Center. And you can visit our website. I'm going to share the link in the chat box right now. We have restarted some of our courses, and you can find the information on our website. And we also prepare some wonderful events for you, which are going to be soon on our website as well. And you will find a lot of surprises if you visit our website, a lot of free products, a lot of paid products for teachers. So this is all done for you to support you. I was staying with Lida together in Kyiv. I traveled to Ternopil for a couple of days to see my family. Coming back to Kyiv on Sunday. So we are here for you and we are here with you. So let's stand together in this.
Thank you very much. It was so nice to see lots of familiar faces, and I'm very happy to see people from Ukraine. I just know that you're alive, that it's very cool. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. It's interesting because I think that Chris has the same. There are lots of people who took like self-PISL tests at grade CELTA, like
Yeah.
lots of familiar faces, and it just so
Oh
good.
yeah, always lots of familiar.
Yeah. So even like Iwana, she was our Delta buddy with Chris.
Oh yeah,
So she was
great.
here. Yeah. So there's Yula Ivchik from Kramatorsk. So I'm so happy to see you. Just it's so cool. Ola, hi Ola. Yay, hello. Right. So cool.
I'm going to quickly run because I've got my class that
So
started
please
5
have a
minutes
good
ago.
class.
So yeah,
So good to see you.
good to see you too.
Bye, bye, bye.
Yeah, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe, take care of yourself and your families, and everything's going to be fine. Yes. Bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.